Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Kitchen. Thanksgiving is fast approaching, as is Christmas, and we've got to help you get ready. So, today I'm really excited to have two very special guests on Hollywood Kitchen. First off, we have Samantha Richardson, and she is a podcaster for Ticklish Business with journalist Kristen Lopez. She is working on an upcoming book, and she's been making these recipes a heck of a lot longer than me and knows a lot about it. So I'm very pleased to have her here. And then we have Simone Elias. Simone Elias is a new person to the Hollywood Kitchen universe. She is a teenager, and this gives me hope that there is hope for future generations because not only does she work in a bakery, which is like the coolest thing ever, she has written a new book called Old Films, Young Eyes, a teenage take on Hollywood's golden age. And I love this. I love the idea of encouraging teenagers to embrace classic Hollywood. And she wrote me, which I was so excited about because I'm usually chasing people down for these things. And also, we talked about what stars we could cover. And she really thought Claudette Colbert would be great. Samantha agreed. So Claudette, guys, is going to get us ready for the holidays. So welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. Good to have you both here. Okay. So, Simone, tell me, I really want to like learn more about you and about your book. So tell me, you're what, 17 or how?
A little younger. I'm 15.
Okay, you are the youngest guest on Hollywood Kitchen. Tell me how you first discovered classic Hollywood because Samantha and I are like very excited to learn about this.
Well, I first discovered classic Hollywood when I was about 5 years old, and I was obsessed with Mary Poppins. And then I didn't watch anything else, although I'm sure I would have loved it, but nobody around me really liked classic movies until one of my good friends started a podcast about them, and she invited me to become the producer. And so I started watching them and writing scripts about them because I've always been a writer. And I got super into the whole world and how it could teach me new things. And then I decided to write a book about it.
If you get sick of your family, I will adopt you because
No. Now they're into classic movies because I got them into it.
that's
That's even
awesome.
better. That's so cool.
That's awesome. Now, Claudette Colbert, Samantha, you share a birthday with Claudette Colbert. Tell me how you
Yes.
fell in love with Claudette.
See, I've always been really into birthdays. It goes back to like my teenage Tumblr days when I would be posting like a post, like a picture of a star every hour on their birthday. And that was like a thing that I used to do. And so I just got so tied up. Like you could probably like shout out any old movie star and I could tell you their birthday. I'm just that weird. But Claudette and I share a birthday, and ever since I found that out, like she's really like the biggest classic movie star that shares my birthday. There's like Gladys George, a couple of other amazing ones, but ever since I found out about Claudette, try to watch like every movie I can find. There are so many gems. Carrie and Simone, I'm sure you both know. I could shout out so many, but of course, It Happened One Night is probably the gateway drug for most people with
Yes.
Claudette. And I actually, when I started writing the cookbook or started thinking about ideas for this book, it's really kind of a travel through time and like the history of women in film through their recipes. And I found Claudette's recipe for cheese and olive puffs forever ago. I probably made this for the first time like 5 to 7 years ago. But it is so delicious. I'm really excited to show it.
That's awesome. Simone, what was the first Claudette film you remember seeing?
I believe It Happened One Night. And then I watched The Gilded Lily. I watched I Met Him in Paris. I watched Family Honeymoon. I got super into all these like very niche films, and I wanted to watch every single one, which I still have not watched every single one because that's a big thing. But I've basically loved every single one of them.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, like everybody else, It Happened One Night was my gateway drug too. And I really think that's probably the greatest romantic comedy like ever made.
It's up there for
It's
sure.
flawless. I literally cannot think of one single thing in that movie to like pick apart. And I pretty much dreamed of owning all the outfits in that movie too. So it's such a classic. And she made some terrific films for such a long period of time. I mean, she had such an incredibly long career and she lived to be 92. So she really had an amazing life and an amazing career. And the recipe we're going to make. So, oh, but by the way, Simone, so for people watching, can you give us like a 101? Like if someone was brand new to the world of Claudette Colbert and didn't know anything about her, like they came in as a blank slate, what would you tell them about her and what would you tell them about why she is still worth watching?
She's still worth watching, definitely, because she lights up the screen. She's incredibly funny. She can make all of the scripts that she acts in, she can make you want to watch them. And I don't know, she's just the perfect actress of the 1930s to represent that period.
I agree. I agree. Samantha, any thoughts?
I totally agree. I think the 30s, I love her in the pre-code era, like the Sign of the Cross and Cleopatra. And I love the original Imitation of Life. I feel like that one was so significant at such
Yeah.
a crazy time where, those kinds of topics weren't even being addressed. I know they weren't able to fully fledge that story out until the 59 version, but her version is still phenomenal. And one gem that I always, always love to throw out for Claudette that, like, I don't know how many people have seen this one. Thunder on the Hill is so good. It's from 1951, I believe, but she plays a nun in it. And there's like a storm, and this convicted murderess, played by Anne Blythe, visits their church for sanctuary from the storm. And she starts to learn maybe she's not the murderess. It's really, really good.
There's I go to the UCLA Film Archive a lot, and there's a Claudette Colbert pre-code I saw on a huge screen a few years back. I'm trying to find the name of it on IMDb because I can't remember off the top of my head. But she plays this spoiled, rotten heiress who, close up, sweetheart, no. Sorry, my famous cat close up is making it's called Manslaughter from 1930. But she plays a
Ooh.
terrorist who like hits someone with their car and kills them. And then like the cop tries to pull her over and she's like she just takes off a diamond bracelet and hands it to the cop and drives off. And it's so brazen. I remember when I saw it, I was like, so that's kind of if you can find it anywhere, that's kind of an that's a deep cut of Claudette Colbert's career. But I was
I
so
missed that. Oh my gosh.
It
yeah,
sounds good.
yeah, it's a spoiled young rich girl is sent to prison for accidentally running down a pedestrian. Yeah, so Claudette Colbert hitting people with her car in 1930. So yeah, if you can locate this movie, yeah, it's kind of shocking.
I also saw her on the big screen, I believe 2 years ago in at TCM Fest. It was one of the pre-codes. I think it was 1932. I forget the name, but she was a blonde in it. It was
Oh,
really good too.
I think a lot of women were going blonde because of Harlow. It was such a
Yeah,
massive
yeah.
thing at the time.
It
So,
was for sure a wig though, but it was a pretty good wig.
oh, cool. Well, let's get started on the recipe. I always feel like if I can get that under my belt, then I can maybe relax a little more. So this recipe is from a 1938 cookbook called Famous Stars' Favorite Foods. And it is Claudette Colbert's fresh blueberry pie. We're going to attempt is definitely the operative word here, to make her pie crust because the pie crust calls for 2 cups of pastry flour. Now, I looked all over my grocery store. I could not find pastry flour. This is regular flour. Simone, you work in a bakery. Am I screwed here or is this going to work?
I think it'll work.
You think it'll work? Excellent.
Yeah.
2/3 cup of shortening. Hang on, close-up's been on the table and now, hang on, sorry. Okay, 2/3 cup of shortening, a half teaspoon of salt, and ice cold water. So we got some really cold water right here. Okay, sift flour and salt 3 times. So, I can't find my sifter at the moment, but Isn't most flour pre-sifted these days anyway?
Yeah, you should be fine.
So, all right, let me go grab a spoon. I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm going to pour the salt into the flour. I'm going to give it a nice stir here. Add half the amount of shortening. Rub lightly with fingers, but not too much. Oh boy. Now this part worries me. This cookbook's kind of rare too, so I really hope I don't damage it in the process. Okay. Right, I've added the shortening. Okay, rub lightly with fingers, but not too much. Add ice water very slowly, just enough to form pastry clean from the bowl. Okay, here goes nothing, and I do mean nothing. All right, I'm trying to, it doesn't say how much ice water, so
Maybe
Probably just until it feels like pie crust.
yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
okay. I purposely did not wear like cute vintage clothes today, knowing this would probably be a gigantic mess on my end. So,
That for me.
okay. I'm still with my hands trying to do this. Okay. Roll lightly on flour board just once with spread with 1/3 the remaining shortening. Okay, so I'm gonna take this, all of this. By the way, I should probably add I did buy pre-made pie crust just in case we had a big disaster here. So, okay. Roll lightly on flour board with 1/3 of the remaining shortening. All right, I'm gonna take the remaining shortening.
Which is butter, right?
Huh?
It's butter, right?
I use Crisco shortening. Is that okay to use, guys?
I don't really know what is shortening just like a big term for butter or
Yeah, it's like lard.
yeah.
Well, I always heard lard was probably not the most healthy thing to use, so I use Crisco vegetable shortening. I hope that.
Yeah, that's what I always use too. That's pretty much all you can find in a grocery store these days. If
Mom,
you're
I don't know if you've cooked a lot of these vintage recipes, but one of my problems, and Samantha, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but one thing I've noticed is a lot of these cookbooks seem to be written for very experienced housewives who know what they're doing, and they leave out a lot of information. And I am just kind of learning as I go along. So I feel like they're not nearly as explicit in their instructions as, frankly, I need them to be. So I've had a few disasters along the way with all this.
It's a lot of trial and error. I definitely agree. Some of the recipes are so old that a lot of the modern kitchen, inventions and specifics haven't really been invented yet. I've used recipes so old that it just says stick in hot oven, like no temperature, no time.
Wow.
That happens a lot.
I've noticed that too, and I'm always like,
I didn't have like a temperature setting for their oven back then.
yeah, and the calibration, I think the old ovens were probably calibrated differently too. And
like a gas oven even back because I for my 20th section especially I've been using recipes as old as like the 1906 1905. They are incredibly vague. I agree.
And sometimes this stuff will make enough for like an army. Like last weekend, I made Lou Costello's family stuffing recipe. I had to cut it in half, and even cutting it in half, I had so much stuffing coming out of my ears around here. It was just kind of nutty, but
The Claudette cheese and olive puffs that I have here that made about 2 dozen.
While I'm trying to figure that.
Oh yeah, they're super easy to throw together. They're like a really good holiday appetizer kind of situation. It's really just a bag or 8 ounces of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. And this is all like the easiest in your food processor. You want to throw in a whole bag, and then you want to throw in 2/3 of a stick of butter or 1/3 of a cup. And then you want to pulse that, and then add a cup of flour, and a splash of Tabasco and a splash of Worcestershire, and you're done. Your dough is
Wow.
all done. And then you wrap up a green pimento stuffed olive and you bake it at 400 degrees. It takes like 15 minutes and they turn out really great. They're like a golden brown.
Oh,
And like
wow.
I said, it made like 2 dozen. They're really hot, but they're very intense too, like a very intense flavor. I like to dip them. Like I'll dip them in ranch. I don't know about the ranch lovers out there,
No,
but they're
that's
really
good.
fun. They
Okay.
came from,
I think for the busy working woman, I'm always appreciating ways that you can do stuff that's quick and efficient because a lot of us are super busy. And boy, the mess this is making, guys, is pretty huge. I'm not giving up quite yet. So give me a few more minutes to roll out this and see if I can make anything resembling a pie crust out of it.
it
They don't
looks
tell you
great
how much water
here.
or anything.
Pardon? I'm sorry, what?
Oh, I was saying they should tell you how much water to put in it.
Yeah, it just says ice cold water, and it doesn't say exactly how much, which is why, I got to be honest with you guys. I kind of had a feeling this would happen. This crust thing is not working out, but luckily, I always try to have a plan B, as my dad encourages me to do. So I've got some pie crusts. If you guys want to chat about Claudette, I'm going to go wash my hands and try to clean up a little bit of this mess, and I'll be back in just a second.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Please stand by. I will say, for those wondering where the puffs came from, it came from the Sinatra Celebrity Cookbook, which was published in 1993, I believe. But yeah, I have this copy. This is a lifesaver. There are so many good celebrity recipes in here. I believe Claudette actually has two in here because she was really good friends with Barbara Sinatra, Frank's wife. Barbara writes a lot about Claudette in here and like how sweet their relationship was. I thought that was really cool.
She was still alive then?
That's what's so crazy. I actually offhand don't know the year Claudette died, but they definitely were close.
Well, Claudette did live to be 92, which is awesome.
Exactly.
Long life.
She was born in
She
06.
96. She passed in
1996, she died?
yeah.
Wow. My God. That means she was born in 1904.
Yeah, I mean, she lived a great life too. She was one of the few actresses that worked from the earliest of sound all the way through the end of like the classic era.
Yeah, a lot of the actresses start in the talkies.
Mm-hmm.
She did, I think, one silent, right? That was lost.
Yeah, every time I try to look up one of these actresses' like silent filmographies, I'm always finding holes. There's so few that survive.
Yeah.
That's a frustrating thing too, I find, because when you're like us and you study this stuff, it's really hard when there's so many gaps and things that are missing because it's like a piece of a puzzle and you don't have that puzzle piece. So
Writing the 20s section of the cookbook has definitely proven to be difficult in that regard. I'll have an actress who did a couple of great films from the 20s, and then I'll look up their filmography, and 2/3 of it is lost.
by the way, I know this is a highly controversial, polarizing film amongst my cinephile friends, but have you guys ever seen Dawson City Frozen in Time?
No.
Nope.
Oh, it's really, I saw it opening night at TCM one year, and I kind of chose that over a lot of the other bigger options. But it's a documentary about how in the silent era, as you guys know, they didn't release movies like they do today, where it's like day and date around the world. They kind of travel slowly around the world. And this place in the Yukon was kind of like the last outpost where this was the last stop on the trail for a lot of these films. And at the time, the studios didn't want to have them shipped back. They didn't want to have to pay to ship the film back. And they'd say, put it in your local library, just hang on to it, whatever. Well, the local library in the Yukon got filled up. They started throwing nitrate in the river. They started burying it under the local hockey rink. Some little kids nearby discovered, hey, if you light this stuff with a match, it goes woof. And then it turned out some film preservationists went up to the Yukon and unearthed a lot of silent film fragments out of the dirt of the Yukon. You can't make this stuff up, by the way. And this
Oh,
film is mostly composed of the fragments they found in the dirt in the Yukon.
wow.
It's
Why is
full-
that controversial? That's so
Pardon?
cool.
I'm sorry?
Why is that controversial? That's
Well, the way he does the film, I wouldn't say controversial, maybe that's not the right word, but he kind of has this kind of bizarre score a little bit by some people's standards. And the film it kind of toggles back between the modern day, it toggles back between the silent era. It's kind of it's an acquired taste. I kind of like a cinema fever dream. And several of my film friends vehemently hate this film and think I'm off my rocker to love it. But to each their own. I'm never going to tell someone they're wrong because they love something. If it speaks to them, it speaks to them. But it's a very unusual film. It's not like a straightforward, dry documentary. It's different. It's just it has a very different flavor. The music is different. And I loved it. It just felt like a feverish meditation about art and loss and time. And it spoke to me. I thought it was really cool. So, love it or hate it, Dawson City Frozen in Time is, if you haven't seen it, it's worth checking out. Okay. Shameless plug over for that. But, all right. So, Plan B is officially being activated here. Boy, I don't know that I'm ever going to try and make a pie crust yet. I cannot tell you the mess I am sitting in right now. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, thanks to modern day technology, I'm just going to unwrap this lovely pie crust here and plunk it down into my pie pan.
we can make the filling.
Yeah, that's the fun part anyway, right?
Yeah.
Is the fun part anyway. Okay.
You
So,
could do that little trick where you put your two fingers and then that's how you make the little waves, right?
yeah, I think so. There are some pans you can buy that you just press it right into and their pans have the waves on them, but that's me. I'm gonna just make them myself with my own fingers here. So, okay, so for the filling, all right, that's the fun part. Okay, we've got 2 cups of blueberries right here, fresh blueberries, by the way. Um, okay, flour, cake plan with sifted flour, line with crust. Brush well with egg white. Oh, I don't have egg whites handy. Well, will I be okay if I don't have egg whites handy?
Yeah, I don't have egg whites either.
Do you have any butter or maybe you can melt the shortening and brush it
Butter
with,
handy. Let me go melt some butter. Hang on. Sorry, this is a little more complicated than I bargained for. So, okay.
2 cups of blueberries, right?
yeah, it's 2 cups of blueberries.
All right, moving the butter off camera here.
All right, that's done. How much flour?
Okay, recipe calls for 2 cups of blueberries, 2/3 cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of arrowroot flour, which I surmise cornstarch is an acceptable solution if you do not have arrowroot flour, and 1 teaspoon of butter. So, okay, where's the butter? Right here. Okay, so all right, brush well with egg white. Instead of egg white, we are going to do butter. So I'm going to take my little brush, my little plasticky brush, and brush it with butter at the bottom. Now, do you guys like a conventional pie crust over the top of everything, or do you go with a lattice? What do you guys prefer?
I love a lattice.
I love a lattice too. Well, ever since I learned how to do it, it just impresses people so much that I can't not do a lattice if I'm
And can
doing
you walk me through how to do a lattice today? Do you mind?
Yeah.
You guys? Okay. All right, so we've got the part and part with the butter here. Okay. Fill heaping with fresh berries, sprinkle with sifted flour, sugar, and salt. Okay, got the berries. We will sprinkle with sifted flour, sugar, and
Yeah,
salt.
I've got the recipe here too.
I wonder if I dump the whole cup in here right now, or I just continue to kind of sprinkle it everywhere.
I would sprinkle the bowl over a little bit and then shake your pie a little bit so it gets all the blueberries coated. And
Ah,
then if it looks coated enough, I'd stop.
okay. Because I notice sometimes older recipes too, they'll call for insane amounts of sugar. And I'm just like, no, that's so much, you know?
I personally don't mind. It's funny. I always love the first time I make an old Hollywood recipe, I make it exactly as is. So then if anything goes wrong, I blame the recipe. And then I make my adjustments after that.
Well, a while back, I did a Buster Keaton smoothie recipe that was, I doubt he made, but it was advertised in 1923 for the film The Three Ages. It was like part of a promotional thing. It was kind of like an early 20s version of like the Orange Julius, but it for
Oh.
so much. I mean, it was insane. And I got his great granddaughter, and she's got two little boys. And I thought she's going to give her kids that much sugar because she'll never get them calmed down, probably. So, but I found that you can use honey or other things to offset the sugar when it actually worked. So, yeah. But
Delicious.
so, I mean,
I think the most sickeningly sweet old Hollywood recipe I've ever made, it was a Gloria Stewart recipe. For those who might not know her, she was in The Invisible Man, and then she went on to play older Rose in Titanic.
oh yeah.
But I love her. Her 30s work is so great. She has this recipe called Cream Vermont. And for lack of a better word, it's the most disgusting maple syrup ice cream concoction you could ever imagine. And it was so sweet from the maple and the sugar. It was just a lot. But I love her. She has some other good recipes.
Okay, so I've got
Guacamole.
my blueberries in here with the cornstarch. And so now I should add the sugar.
Okay.
2/3 of a cup, right?
Okay. Let's see. Sifted flour and sugar and salt. Mix well with berries. Okay, so I am mixing everything here. I'm kind of sprinkling it all over the place and trying to get some consistency. And now it is mixed. My hands are clean, so don't worry, anybody watching. Okay. All right, pinch of salt. You know, I might add a tiny bit of cinnamon. I just think cinnamon kind of makes everything taste better.
Cinnamon.
Would Claudette Colbert mind if I just went off script a tiny bit?
I think she'd like it.
Fancy lady.
Okay, so spot over with dots of butter. And here's what mine looks like right now. Does this look remotely
That
acceptable?
looks great. You're doing great so
I
far.
didn't use all the flour or all the sugar. I've just kind of sprinkled it over all this. So,
Yeah, and that's what it says to do. You're doing great.
okay. I'm new to a lot of this, so I'm, figuring out as I go along. Okay, spot over with dots of butter and top with crust or strips of pastry crisscross. So I'm going to get some dots of butter here and put over the top. Samantha, do you use pre-made crust when you do your lattice?
Yes.
Easiest.
Yeah, I pretty much, I mean, I usually, will make a pie for Thanksgiving or the holidays. And with the holidays, there are just so many other things I have to do because I like to make everything. So I always go for the pre-made crust these days. And it's so much easier to get into your strips for the lattice because for a homemade pie crust, you want it to be a little crumbly. And that's not quite as good for strips from my experience.
Yeah.
The pre-mades are nice and smooth.
Okay, so, all right, I am gonna now get my other crust. Okay, so again, I didn't use nearly all the flour or sugar. I hope that's okay.
That looks like a lot. I think you're good.
Okay. Because I
Yeah,
only made a handful of pies.
it was too much sugar for that amount of blueberries.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that too, but
There's like a pool of sugar at the bottom of my bowl.
it's interesting because it seems the way that the standards were back then are just different from today in terms of, the way they ate, the way they did a lot of things. But
A lot of the time when they make a fresh filling too, you'll have it sit and soak in the sugar. So it gets not quite macerated, but like it breaks down a little bit. So maybe that's her idea. But with the flour and everything, that makes it a little confusing.
all right, I'm going to unroll this and put it on some foil. And Samantha, I've got a pizza cutter. Is that the right way to go, guys?
Yeah,
Honestly, that's perfect. That's
yeah.
absolutely
Cutter.
perfect.
All righty. Hope I am doing this right.
Yeah, you
But
want to make an inch and a half thick strips, maybe like, 9 or 10 strips for your whole
I
thing.
was thinking about the pies I've made so far on Hollywood Kitchen. And again, these are all the first time I'm making these things. I made Janet Gaynor's pumpkin pie. That was one of the earliest ones I did. And it didn't taste like pumpkin at all because I think it had a lot of mace in it. So it had a very unique taste, but it turned out well. I did Cary Grant's apple pie, and I learned a really big lesson on that one. And that was, I just stuck the pie in my oven and I didn't have it on a baking sheet. And the apples bubbled over. And I had the thickest, sugariest apple mess stuck all over the bottom of the inside of that oven. I thought I would never get it clean, ever. It was so bad.
Oh no. I have a similar apple pie story. I
And
tried to make Jimmy Stewart's apple pie. His apple pie is my nemesis.
oh boy.
Because it says soak the apple slices in lemon juice so they won't brown. And then it's always way too lemony. Way too lemony.
Gosh. And the other thing was, let's see, Annette and I made a coconut cream pie. And I haven't done this episode yet, but it's in the future lineup. I was going to do it in Halloween and life got nuts and I didn't have time. But Angie and I did a test bake on Simone Simon's strawberry chiffon pie.
There's an
Oh,
actress named Simone in Old Hollywood.
Simone. I think it's Simone Simon or Simone.
People people say it differently. I actually don't know which one it is either. But either way, it's Simone. It's either
She's
Simon or Simone.
She's a French actress and she starred in Cat People. And I found this recipe in a fan magazine, but it looked so summery and light and delicious. So when it was like 107 in LA, I made that so light and fluffy and refreshing and delicious. Oh my God, I cannot wait to do a future episode on that. I just haven't had time, but it is in the plans eventually.
I adore her. Cat People is probably in my top 4 favorite horror movies.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, that's really up there for me. So I need that recipe someday.
Yeah. Oh, I'll send it to you. Because sometimes as much as I love doing the really iconic stars, like Claudette, I also like to do stars that are not as well known or you know what I mean? And so I found that recipe on Digital Media History, that website in a fan magazine. And I was like, oh, so thought that was really cool. Let's see. Okay, so I've got my first lattice stripes here, and then gonna do another series of them. I think I'm going to have some left over, actually. But, all right, guys, so here is what mine is looking like right now, just so you guys know.
Wow.
Beautiful.
That look okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, got a ton of dough left over, so I may stick that in the freezer and get it ready for Thanksgiving time. So, okay, so this recipe, it did not give you an oven temperature and it did not give you a cooking time, which, as Samantha knows, is pretty on brand for these things. So, I looked up on the internet and it said 375 for 50 minutes. Does that sound right to you?
I would check it after like 2030, but that sounds about right.
Okay, so right now I am going to stick this in the oven, guys. We're going to see how this comes out. I will be right back.
This is so much sugar. I have to pull all the sugar out because it's like pooling at the bottom.
Oh my goodness.
Ugh.
You know what I've learned is kind of through life, your taste buds change too. Like when I was younger, I would have wanted like truckloads of sugar. And now at my age, I'm kind of like, oh God, that's so sweet. And I kind of cut way back on it for some reason. So I don't know. Sometimes what you like and dislike can completely vary throughout time, you know? So, all right, mine is in the oven. I'm going to set my iPhone here for 20 minutes or I'll check on it after 20 at least. So, Simone, tell us about how you wound up writing this book and doing the podcast that you do.
Yeah, so I actually, one of my mentors was Laura Gabrielle, who
We love her. She's been on a zillion Hollywood. She's a very good friend.
who who wrote Marion Davies book. And so I was writing a book proposal as you do for nonfiction books. And my mom is an author, so I knew how to do that. And she told me about this press called McFarland, who publishes a lot of nonfiction books on old Hollywood. And I was kind of ready to give up, and I was like, it's not going to be published. It's too hard. And then I got an acceptance letter from them, which was amazing, about a year ago. And I wrote it, and I really, for each chapter, I wanted to make sure that um, it was a relevant topic in classic Hollywood and not just a movie that isn't relevant anymore.
Well, how do you make the decision between what is relevant to like your generation today and what isn't? Because I feel like a 100-year-old in a younger person's body, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. But
Me
you're
too, honestly.
I get that. So like how do you decide like what are young kids gonna like versus what they aren't gonna like? Like how do you
Yeah, it comes down to the references. Like if a movie has been referenced multiple times, or if there's some topic in the movie that's talked about a lot today. For example, with It Happened One Night, that movie is present in like every movie today. So I knew that I had to talk about that one. So it sort of came down to its relevance in modern culture and how many times people say name in the movie or talk about it.
I twice a year I kind of have a mini residency at the Old Town Music Hall, which is a historic 20s movie theater here in LA. And they let me introduce a movie and do a little 20-minute presentation before. And it's kind of been cool because they kind of let me do what I want. And the first movie they asked about, I told them, I said, I want to show X Lady, which is a Betty Davis pre-code that almost never gets screened anywhere. I love the deep cuts in people's career. I'm fascinated by that. And I showed it. And then one of the things I thought about it, talking about relevancy, is in this movie, Betty plays a young woman who demands equal pay as a man for her work as an illustrator and artist. She decides to live with her boyfriend without being married. And there's a lot of stuff in that movie that I felt like, even in 2024, audiences could see that and be like, whoa, this is 1933. And I actually had a young woman come up to me at the end of that screening and go, oh my God, I can't believe what I just saw. And she was really amazed by it. And it's not all about Eve, like it's not in the pantheon of Betty movies. In fact, Betty actually hated that movie and totally disavowed it, but she did that a lot anyway, so I digress. But the thing is, I just felt like it was a pre-code about an independent woman, and a lot of the issues in that film are still issues we talk about now.
Yeah,
You know,
I have a whole chapter called Should Ladies Behave? Pre-code Women Say No. Because Should Ladies Behave is a pre-code movie. And so I wrote about a lot of the pre-code movies and how they really broke the boundaries for women. And even those topics would still be like mind-blowing today. So I talked about like Call Her Savage and Female. and Redheaded Woman and Babyface and
Yeah.
all of those ones that really kind of blew my mind. And I think also the one about the woman who has a baby without her husband. I think it's like Only Yesterday, that one.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I did a lot of that. And those are the ones that kind of blew my mind the most, really.
There's a Barbara Stanwyck pre-code that never gets shown. I have pleaded with the Old Town to show it, and they have not said yes to me on this one. But it's called Ladies They Talk About, and it's a Barbara Stanwyck prison drama pre-code. And nobody talks about this movie. And I'm like, no. I mean, I get Babyface is kind of, as Leonard Maltin has said, like the Citizen Kane of pre-code, but Ladies They Talk About is pretty darn awesome. And I feel like, I don't know, I just kind of have a thing for the movies that get slid through the cracks a little bit, you know?
Yeah. I feel that way about Call Her Savage.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, what? This is Clara Bow's best movie. What are you doing?
Well,
She's getting a big resurgence, and that movie is too. I've started to see that one screened more often.
Yeah. Yeah.
and the thing is, David Sten, her biographer, who's been on Hollywood Kitchen before, he's been hosting a big Clara Bow retrospective at Film Forum in New York. And he tells me these have been selling out in nanoseconds. The crowds have been huge. And I think for a lot of women, Clara is so relevant because, as David has said, way before Sex in the City, like she was the first woman to be like, I'm going to do things on my terms and like pursue men and live the life I want. And like, I think she's so revelatory to women today, no matter what age you are. You know, I think she would herself probably even be shocked at how relevant she is.
No, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the Taylor Swift song now has put
That's
her
what
in.
I was gonna say too. Yeah.
When I heard that Taylor Swift had a song named after her, I thought, thank God, because now a zillion people are going to go to Google and they are going to unleash a world of magic before them that is Clara Bow.
And then also there were a lot of people who were creating merch of Clara Bow and not even watching her movies, and it's just like the connection to the person they like. So I was at points disappointed and very like amazed at the attention she was getting.
The day the song came out, I saw that a Swiftie went out and made her star look really beautiful, like cleaned it up and decorated it with flowers, and I thought that was really sweet.
I was in LA that day. It came out too at TCM. It came out the same weekend. So I had like a little listening party with my friends so we could hear the song that night after we did a screening of Footloose. That was at the pool at the Roosevelt, I think.
And the thing about Clara, like I've said, she transcends time because, you know, like on my cemetery tour that I do, which you need to take Simone next time you're in LA, but it's like there are some stars that are of their time, like they're kind of frozen in the era in which they were in. And there are other stars that you can look at them in 2024 and be blown away by how contemporary they feel now. And Clara is one, I think Claudette is one too.
I was about to say that. Claudette's such a good example.
Because in the 30s, I mean, she just beautifully embodied that woman in the driver's seat. And I love Cleopatra. I love how daring she is in that film. And then I was really touched when I was in college a long time ago. I watched a lot of the World War II films, and Claudette Colbert was in a lot of them playing the mother, which for a lot of actresses, the minute they started playing mother roles, they kind of felt like it's all going downhill. But for Claudette, those were fantastic because she was showing that, you know what, we can survive this war. We're going to work while the men are away. We're going to make it on our own. And they were kind of a revelation to me in that, you know, I feel like history is, well, when I was a kid, it was like kind of always taught from like the male perspective. But when you see how it would have affected your life and your family had you lived that, and I think Claudette, she made What So Proudly We Hail, help me here. I know there's others she made. Since You Went Away.
Yeah.
And these were excellent movies that really captured the plight of women at that time.
And even after that, I also love, I believe it's called The Secret Heart with Robert Ryan. It's like from 53. Her post-war stuff is so good. And The Egg and I is just a classic. And
I
at
haven't
that,
seen that one.
I haven't either, I'll admit, but there's a whole fan base online that when it comes to Claudette, that's all they talk about. I actually have Carrie has one too. I know we've talked about it, but I thought I'd bring along. It's a little promotional cookbook that they released in 1947 for the Egg and I, and it's claims this is one where, as Carrie and I know, it gets a little dubious, but it claims to have some of Claudette's and Fred McMurray's favorite egg recipes.
I can send you scans of it, Simone.
Oh, yes.
Well,
Very cute.
That's
When I
so
did
cool.
Claudette research, I knew I had to have this. There's a Claudette Colbert cake. I think
Oh
that's
my
part-
gosh. I bet a lot of those they didn't even like see before they released it though,
When
right?
I started,
Absolutely not.
Samantha's been doing these for much longer than me, but I kind of started doing this during lockdown because I was alone in a teeny tiny apartment, just trying to survive this whole mess. And I started making these. I'd collected these recipes just for fun, and I started cooking these and just doing little videos, And I'd have people write me and go, God, they didn't make that. And I'd say, here's the thing. Even if they didn't, it's a fun way to look at them as the real human beings that they were. Because they might have been movie stars, sex symbols, icons, bombshells, whatever it was, but they were real people. And talking about food, it's a unifying thing. Like no matter where you live, what you do, where you are, we all have to eat. And it's just a way to kind of look at them through a human lens. And there are some that have confirmed for me they did make it. We know Vincent Price did. We know Joan Crawford. We know Marlene Dietrich. There's certain ones that it definitely resonates. And then there's others that, it might have been a publicity person just sitting in a room pulling it out of their head. But I don't know. I just still think it's a fun context.
Yeah, and even if it isn't true that they made the recipes, it still reflects how people ate at the time.
That too, absolutely. And
Good examples of food from that era.
Yeah. Like how they say shortening. Nobody says that now.
And also too, like we were saying, there's no cooking time. There's no cooking. It's kind of, I think these were just written for women who really knew what they were doing, and I'm not that person. So I tend to need a lot of specificity.
Yes, for
And
sure.
also, I think they were great promotional items. Like when I did the Buster Keaton episode, he had a film called The Three Ages in 1923, and they did like the Three Ages smooth. They didn't call it a smoothie, but it was like a promotional beverage tied into the Three Ages. And I found a newspaper article about a local drugstore that was selling so many of these because people would want to go there and get the little drink that Buster Keaton was tied to in some sense and go see the Three Ages. So it's kind of a fun way to look to it, how they promoted movies like Egg and I'm sure that was a publicity natural thing to do, to go Egg and okay, egg cookbook, recipes using eggs.
Uh-huh.
It made sense from a promotional standpoint. And also usually women were the ones doing the cooking, and I think women were the ones buying the movie tickets back then too.
Yeah.
So if you're going to appeal directly to the female audience, a cookbook or recipes attributed to those stars is a good way to do it.
And it's a way for, I think, for them to feel close to the stars. Like I'm tasting the exact same thing, or I'm doing the same motions as them, even if it wasn't actually true.
Yeah, and I think too, way back during lockdown, I did a Hungarian recipe. It was Vilma Benki's Hungarian goulash.
I've
And
heard of that one.
yeah, and I didn't know a Vilma Benki expert, but I'm friends with Alan Rody, who wrote the Michael Curtiz biography, and he was Hungarian. So it was a loose grasp, admittedly, but I thought, well, it's lockdown. And also, why don't we just talk about Hungarians in Hollywood? Because Hollywood is such a great melting pot, and you've got people from all over the globe that came to this town to make these movies, and their artistic sensibilities, their style, their food, their everything kind of wove into the fabric of who we are today, here in Los Angeles and even in this country, really.
I do have to get my charger because my computer's gonna run out and I don't want to be off of this chat. So I'll be
All right,
right back.
excellent. We can't have that. But, so that's kind of to me, that's kind of a fun part of it as well, is looking at the multicultural. you know.
Absolutely. It's amazing you bring up Hungarian food specifically because I think of all of the cuisines I've tried through my old Hollywood cooking journey, that's been the one that I've really been introduced to and fallen in love with the most because I am a big, big, big Zsa Zsa Gabor fan. She's probably one of my favorites. And she inspires me a lot in the kitchen specifically. She was one of those who really was a very, very good cook, and she never quite got the credit for that and some other things that she did. But yeah, Hungarian food is amazing. And I learned that through Zsa Zsa and this kind of cooking.
You know, another thing I recently learned from my friend Mary Stanford is that Joe Pasternak, the producer at MGM of the musicals and stuff, he wrote an entire Hungarian cookbook. I
Wow.
found it for like $5 on eBay. And I'm like, how did I live my life all this time and not know about this? So I will send you a link, guys, if you want to order Joe Pasternak's Hungarian cookbook, because
Ah,
I agree. That Hungarian food is really good. Like, I would seriously want to go to Hungary now and just eat my way through the country.
I always tell people if you like sour cream and paprika, then you'll like Hungarian food.
This is true. It's true. It's funny, when I made that goulash recipe, it made so much goulash and it was lockdown. I was lucky I could even find the ingredients, to be honest. And I didn't want to waste it. I literally ate Hungarian goulash for lunch and dinner every day for like a week and a half. And I have never eaten goulash since that time. Like, I got so gouged out.
That's one of those recipes that a lot of people have different opinions on. Like I've seen it with and without noodles, and it's like a whole thing.
That's true. Is I like recipes though that you can kind of personalize to your taste though. So because goulash, you just throw it in like a crock pot. So it's kind of one of those things where you can, it's very versatile, I guess.
When I was doing the research on Claudette for my cookbook, it was so fascinating because pretty much all or most of actually these cheese and olive puffs I know are legit because Barbara Sinatra said that they were really close friends and that she got the recipe from her. But otherwise, as you were saying, most of them were pretty fake. But what I did find fascinating was not only were there a lot of French recipes because she was French, there were a lot of American recipes that she had kind of embraced, or at least had supposed to embrace. Like there's a New York scrambled eggs that she has that I find so fascinating. And like it was really hard to narrow down because she had so many French recipes that looked great, but it's whether she actually made them or not. And I definitely had to stick with like the tried and true. I'm gonna try one, by the way. I haven't had one
you
yet.
you have any Ginger Rogers recipes in your book?
Oh gosh, we had during lockdown, my friend Janet Klein, who she's a performer and musician who specializes in teens, 20s, and 30s music. She and I did a Ginger Rogers and we did her grape mint punch, which was so good. Janet has it like regularly on tap at her home. If you visit her house, she will offer you Ginger Rogers grape mint punch. And then we made this like peanut sand, like finger food sandwich.
I've heard of both of those recipes. Yeah, it's kind of in my archive of big stuff that I amassed for the cookbook.
Those are really good. And in the book, it was a Nord refrigerator, which is like a refrigerator brand in the 1930s. And sometimes these oven or refrigerator companies would make their own promotional cookbook. And this was Ginger Rogers after theater snacks. So you think, okay, Ginger's coming back from a Ziegfeld show and it's late at night in New York and she wants some food. So it's kind of got this glamorous sheen of, oh, this is what Ginger would have eaten around midnight when she got home. And I'll send you copies of that too because it's really fun.
Oh, that is such a vibe.
And there's a Ginger Rogers Christmas cake. There's a lot on her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say when I was doing my Ginger Rogers research for the book, she's going in my 1930s section along with Claudette. I found probably up there among the most like fake recipes. So I just had no idea what to believe. So I reached out to one of my favorite Ginger Rogers researchers. Her name is Kylie Pins. She's amazing. She knows everything there is to know about Ginger Rogers. I reached out to her and I was like, what did Ginger actually eat? And she told me she pulled up probably 20 separate newspaper articles, all saying that she was obsessed with chocolate chip ice cream. That was her all-time favorite. She was obsessed with ice cream in general, but that was her favorite flavor.
Well,
And
I
so
saw there's pictures of her at her ice cream soda fountain in her house.
she had an entire soda fountain built in her home. The pictures that I see of her, like at her home, at her own personal soda fountain, are amazing. So she was obsessed with ice cream. So what I'm doing for the book, instead of using one of her recipes, since a lot of them are kind of, again, dubious, I'm making a chocolate chip ice cream soda, which would be very of the 30s in her honor.
That's great.
And
She's my favorite. Definitely.
when we did,
And Claudette is my second favorite.
when we did the Clara Bow one, I talked to David Sten because Clara, some of the stars, sweetheart, we don't need to lick them. I'm just, oh God, this place is gonna be so trashed afterwards. Anyway, Clara was very honest. Like some of the stars would be like, of course I slave over a hot stove making meals after a long day at the set. Clara was like, no, I don't cook at all. I have a chef who does it. And she was like, no bones about it. But so the recipes were a little funky, like jellied tuna and stuff like that.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I showed a bunch of them to David Sten, and he said, well, you know what? Clara loved chop suey. That's very legit. We know she didn't cook, but she loved chop suey. Would you just want to make that? And my friend Angie and I did that episode, and Angie found a 1920s chop suey recipe from a newspaper, and that's what we made. So even if they didn't make it, then we know they ate it in the case of Clara, in the case of Ginger. Like it's fun to, yeah, recapture that thing that they really liked,
And get down to the bottom of it, like because with people like Ginger and Norma Shearer is another good example. There's so many fake recipes out there, just things that she probably had nothing to do with. But when you find like the gem of like, okay, this one she actually did, I am always so happy.
We've done a lot of Norma Shearer around here because I'm friends with Darren Barnes. And one of the episodes was like her sweet pineapple salad. And it's like pineapple, dill pickles, mayonnaise, and green jello. And Darren and I made it and we're like, we're not eating this. There's no way. And Darren's husband ate it and we joked he was taking one for the team because there's no way Darren and I were going to touch that. We've done a ton of Norma ones that were big disasters, but the one that worked was her chocolate Antoinette, which I'm pretty sure was to promote Marie Antoinette from 1938. That
Mhm.
was the winner. Who knows if she ate it, but it's decadent, it's chocolate, it's promoting Marie Antoinette. So, it kind of checks out, at least from a publicity standpoint.
Well, I have my blueberries are done. I was able to fish out the extra sugar and now they look really good. So I'm gonna put them in a little.
I'll be right back, guys. I'm going to go check on the pie.
I'm reading through our Facebook comments. We've got so many great people commenting.
Yay.
In her autobiography, Ginger includes her egg recipe made in a double boiler, delicious but labor intensive. Meg McSweeney said that.
Ah,
Meg, I definitely gotta look that up.
yeah. By the way, shout out to Meg McSweeney. I ran into her at the Thai Power ceremony. We were both at, Samantha. She gave me the cutest cat mug that looks just like close up. It was awesome. So,
Oh, that's adorable.
Oh, I've got my cat here too.
ooh, make cinnamon roll-ups with the leftover lattices. Ooh, Meg, thank you so much. That's a great idea. I shall do that.
Yeah, that's very smart.
Yeah. Oh, parchment paper. Debbie Weiner is saying to do that. I didn't have parchment paper, but I do have aluminum foil. So I do have that. And yeah. The Egg and I introduced Ma and Pa Kettle franchise and started the franchise. Oh, Meg is also saying, also food is culture, so recipes of the era are a window into the times. Shortening is because of butter shortages during World War II.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's so
In
fascinating.
fact, I'm gonna do one of our TCM colleagues, I think it's Jessica Pickens. She did a whole blog post that I was very inspired by. It was about Margaret O'Brien's sugar rationing recipes in the 1940s during World War II.
Wow.
Miller loves child stars. Like that's one of his areas of interest. So I don't know if we'll make it happen this Christmas or not, but I would like to be inspired, and full credit to Jessica, and maybe try to make on our own some of those low sugar 1940s rationing recipes
Do
and
they
see how
use
they turn out.
honey or molasses or what do they use?
I think they used molasses in some of them. Which molasses is tricky because my dad is really into molasses, and that stuff is like you could retard your roof of your house with that stuff. It's so thick.
Oh, yeah.
Heaven help you if you're like me and you accidentally spill it on things because that's.
Oh no.
Debbie Weiner says SC Cuddles Sakal was a Hungarian chef Felix, Christmas in Connecticut.
Oh, I love that movie. That's the perfect movie to watch around this time of year.
We did a recipe, Danny and I, a few Christmases ago, because Danny's Jewish, and I always joke that all roads lead to Danny for Christmas episodes. But we did several Barbara Stanwyck recipes. We did the popovers, which she mentions, and Remember the Night.
Popovers.
Those were fun. And then we decided to make the pancakes, and we did a pancake flip, and the pancake flew up in the air and it landed on the floor of Danny's living room. And felt we needed to recreate it just to do it, just because we could, basically.
Are there any recipes, publicity from that movie?
I'd have to look into that. I know there were a lot of pancake recipes that Claudette Colbert did for Imitation of Life. I've seen some of those because that was such an obvious tie-in.
Yeah.
But I'll have to look into that, to be honest. That's a
I
great.
want those recipes, pancake recipes from Imitation of Life. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really amazing. I didn't know about those. I have a lot of Barbara Stanwyck recipes, and again, most of them are just like publicized recipes, but none as far as like cross promotion for the movie that I know of. Most of her recipes are pretty savory in my experience. Like she has a leg of lamb and wine sauce and a chicken recipe that are both pretty good.
We made her Christmas kitfuls, which is basically like a little pastry with jelly
I
inside.
heard of those too. How were those?
Those turned out pretty well. So we made the Christmas kitfuls. We did the pancake flip. We did the popovers. We had a whole Barbara Stanwyck fest near Danny and I, and it was fun. But yeah, I kind of feel a little bit like her character in Christmas in Connecticut because I honestly don't really know what I'm doing in the kitchen. I'm just kind of fumbling and learning as I go along, but it's part of the fun.
I definitely relate at points when I had my monthly blog where I would do old movie star recipes. I would relate very hard when in the kitchen it would all go wrong, but when she's typing it all out it sounds so lovely and perfect. Don't pay attention to the 5 times I messed up the dough in this recipe.
One of my hardest recipes, Donna Hill, shout out to Donna Hill. She's a film historian, Valentino author, and incredible cook. And I have been on the receiving end of food when I go to San Francisco. But anyway, when I did the Douglas Fairbanks lemon pie, I think I made that 4 or 5 times because I had never learned how to temper an egg. That was a new concept for me. So I would just pour the egg in the hot mixture, and basically I had a pie of lemon gook or gook, whatever you call it, lemon slime with these floating scrambled eggs in it. And so I kept having to redo it. And then Donna gave me like a coaching session online of how to temper eggs. So I made that lemon pie so darn many times. It was crazy.
Donna's been so helpful for me for the cookbook too. The Famous Foods of Famous Stars book that you have, she gave me her copy, which was so kind because it's a rare one, as you mentioned. And that one's been invaluable for the cookbook that I'm writing. It's been really great. I definitely relate. I have had a lot of those experiences. You learn as you go though, there are some things I'll be like, I want to make this recipe. And then by the time I actually open it up, I've never heard of what to do before. Like, I believe I had never even broken down a chicken before. And that was the first time that I did that for an Elizabeth Taylor chicken recipe. So really it teaches me how to cook as I go along, as I make all of these.
I love Elizabeth Taylor. Oh my gosh.
She is another one who, like, if you look up her real recipes, like the ones that she actually made, they are
peanut butter burgers.
I haven't heard of that one.
No, she did like peanut butter, burger, and then bun. That sounds really gross to me.
Me too.
She has a chicken with avocado and mushroom recipe that is probably one of the best old Hollywood recipes I've ever tried. It's so good.
Can you
Excellent.
guys hear my oven on? Is that bad?
No, I don't hear.
No, okay, good. It's making a loud noise. But I put a little crumble on top of my blueberries, so I'm gonna put it in the oven now.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So yeah, I love Elizabeth Taylor. Like the more I learn about her as a person, the more I love her. She had a
She's
lot.
one of my absolute favorites, probably in like my top three. I am so obsessed with her. It's just fun to like she has this book that she released in the 80s called Elizabeth Takes Off. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah, my friend upstairs, Mary Stanford, has it. Yeah.
She talks about like her weight loss and it's just in a really refreshing and healthy way. Basically just, I wasn't at a good place in my life, and I gained this weight, but this is how I lost it and how I feel about myself now, and just these healthy recipes. It was such a great concept even for the 80s because diet culture back then was so toxic. But it's a really great book, and she has some amazing recipes in it. I think I have her chicken steamed in white wine, which I'm going to use for my cookbook.
Oh,
But
cool.
just every recipe, I mean, I don't know about the peanut butter burgers, but every recipe I've found of Elizabeth's has been
I
great.
believe that one is actually in that book.
Is
Oh,
it?
I need to
Yeah.
order it. Another thing about Claudette that I love is I don't know that much about her as a human being. Like I've actually never read a full Claudette biography or anything.
I don't think there's actually is there one?
And not that I know of. It's funny because there are some stars that have 50 bazillion biographies, like say Marilyn, for example. And then there is not one at all. And I just think like, how did this happen? But you don't hear
Somebody's got to be writing one. Come on.
you don't hear much about her getting in any huge scandals. She wasn't married to any major superstar. I don't even know that she had affairs with any of them either. I mean, I don't hear much about her like off stage. The only major story I know about Cletta as a personal antidote was when she was up for the Academy Award for It happened one night that she didn't think she was going to win. So she was at the train station taking a train to New York. And when they realized she won, they went down to the train station and dragged her out to the Oscars in her train outfit, her suit, so she could pick up the award. And that's like the only like personal antidote. And then I also know that she could be a little tricky working with Travis Bannon because I've seen like images of her like looking at one of his sketches for her gowns and like crossing it out with a big X because she didn't like it or something. But those are the only two stories that I really know about her. You know what I mean?
I think it's really refreshing sometimes when that happens, though, because I feel like so many women of that era, like I think Vivian Lee is a good example. I opened up a Vivian Lee book the other day and it was like, you can't find a word that's not about Laurence Olivier. Like, she's just such an afterthought sometimes in the way that she's written. And sometimes those associations just completely mark them as a person. And that's all they talk about. Like Elizabeth, Liz, and Dick, that's all you hear sometimes. And about her marriages and not about her films. So I honestly think it's a bit of a blessing that Claudette is best remembered for her films. And they're
Yeah,
all so phenomenal.
that's
I
what
do,
I would want if I were them.
yeah, I do think that somebody in the classic film community has got to be working on one of those biographies because it's crazy that nobody has yet.
And I think too, the stars that die really young or really tragically, James Dean, Marilyn, Jean Harlow, I think they tend to get a lot of attention because, as we've talked about before, but because they're young, they're beautiful, they're frozen in time. And I think that's something that draws people in quite a lot. I think scandal draws them in, celebrity marriages draw them in. So for those who kind of didn't have she's only been married twice, Claudette, and the second marriage was like the one that lasted. I think they don't have that kind of buzz about them the way some do that just seem to be constant, nonstop drama. Do you know what I mean?
For sure. I think Claudette is another one similar to Olivia de Havilland, where she retired fairly not early, but she retired before she could have. She could have worked her whole life if she wanted to. She lived such a long time. But then, as soon as she retired, she lived in Barbados, which is so fascinating. She spent many years there, and it was really just a very peaceful retirement. So I don't want to say there's not much to write about, but she just enjoyed spending time with her friends and cooking stuff like this.
Gotta
And
be some story though, because it's a long life, so there's got to be some kind of scandal, right? Maybe.
No. I mean, I'd love to go to Barbados because I've never been, but I would also love to see her grave. She's buried in Barbados, I think. So that would be interesting. Let's see. Monique, my friend in Amsterdam. Hey, Monique. She wants to know, are there any relatives still alive of Claudette? To my knowledge, she did not have children.
No, right? She
No.
didn't.
So I don't know if there's anybody out there that's still from her family that's still with us.
It probably is, right?
Look
Like,
into that.
very proud of her French heritage, so there may be people from France still of relation, but none that I know of, like none that are like outspoken about it.
did
Meg,
she have siblings?
yeah, I don't know about that. I'll have to look into that. Meg McSweeney is saying, here's a great Claudette antidote. She was doing a play with Rex Harrison. On the first day of rehearsal, she overheard Harrison say something very rude about her. He was known for that. And she punished him by speaking only in French to the director, who was also bilingual throughout the entire rehearsal process. So Harrison never knew what they were saying. That's pretty awesome. I've never heard anything nice about Rex Harrison, so I hate to say it, but that kind of checks out. So,
Oh,
but
he married Clara Bow, right?
pardon?
He married
Oh,
Clara
that
Bow.
was Rex Bell.
Oh, Rex
Harrison
Bell.
was My Fair Lady.
Same name that nobody hears today anymore. So makes them laugh.
So tell me, I have some more questions about your book because I've had a few people are asking, wait, where do I order this book? So tell us where to order your book and where to find it, because it'd be a great holiday gift for that teenager in your life who you would like to discover classic Hollywood.
Yeah, so my book is published by McFarland. It came out 2 days ago. You can you can find it on Amazon, on the Barnes and Noble website, on McFarland's website. You just look up Old Films, Young Eyes, a teenage take on Hollywood's golden age.
Very cool. Now, when you were writing this book, like, what were some of the things that you learned while doing this book? Like, what part of the process that you learned? Like, was there a new film you discovered, a new star you discovered, like something that was a new thing for you?
Yeah, I think basically every chapter I discovered something new. And I think I discovered, especially for people who aren't as into the classic film community and uh, as we are, there's definitely going to be stuff that you don't know. That I learned about like the tie-in of teenagers to film noir, how they sort of helped the teenager grow into what it was in the 1950s. I learned about how female directors were more prominent in the 1920s than they are now. I learned about interracial marriage in film. I learned about this movie called What's So Bad About Feeling Good with Mary Tyler Moore that basically predicted the pandemic. There's just so many discoveries that kind of blew my mind. So it'd be hard to name them all.
Well, I like how you've kind of set these films against the backdrop of what's going on in the world, because nothing happens in our world in a vacuum. And I think everything in the movies and art is a reaction to what's going on in the world, reaction to World War One, World War Two, the Great Depression, the Korean War, the Blacklist. I mean, everything kind of sinks into the art.
Yeah, and I learned so much more from these movies than I ever did from a textbook, and that's really the joy of it. And it's in a way more fun way than, reading something and hearing the dates it happened.
Well, I think when you see the emotion of a movie, makes it very real to you in a way that no amount of, you know, I don't know, description maybe is going to. Like for me, I'm very visual, and for me, like I can read about World War One and all of that, and I have, but when I see the big parade, especially the very end, it just kills me, the scene when John Gilbert comes home and his family sees what's happened to him after the war. Like to me, that brings home the reality of World War One so much more than just, you know what I mean, just a series of dry information about it. Like movies make it personal, they make it visceral, they make it relatable, I
And
think.
they teach you that people are people no matter what decade they lived in or what they believed, right?
That's true too, for better and worse.
And I talk a lot about the pros and cons of classic movies, the ones that you should watch and the ones that are, you can throw away. And I think that was an important thing to discuss. Like, nobody really has to see The Birth of a Nation. Nobody really has to see a blackface film, but there are so many that are so worth watching. So I had to talk about both of those things.
Okay. What TCM does really well, though, is when they show those, they contextualize them and they present them in a way that, because I think when you just show stuff like that without introducing it the right way, giving it I think that's when it's really, really bad thing. But I like how they set it up to explain to you why this was made and the effect that it ultimately kind of had when it was made. So that's important to note. So, Samantha, how are those cheese puffs? Have you had any more of them?
I just had the one. I am obsessed. The first time I made them, I think I maybe used a sharper cheddar, and they were very intense. These are a little better. Like they taste a little more balanced, which I think is really great. I love that. Um, but yeah, to your guys' point, I totally agree. It's so amazing to connect the past to the present. I think that's such a good project. I'm just so excited.
You know, we got a really nice compliment for you, Simone. Debbie Weiner said, Simone is restoring my faith in the world.
Mine too.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Kids are going to be all right. The kids are going to be all right. No, it makes me happy to know that this will live on because, you know, a lot of us that are spent our lives studying film, we're not going to live forever, you know,
I'm not
and
gonna live
you know,
forever. Come on.
and I like to think that somebody somewhere is going to carry this forward into the future, that when I am long gone from the world, that people are still going to talk about Claudette Colbert, people are still going to watch her films. These are still going to be relevant and matter, and there are people that care about them.
And what I found when I was doing this podcast, which is actually still going, was that there are a lot of teens actually that are into classic movies. We did episodes with them. They follow us. We help each other. So it's not just me too.
Hey, I love that also because I love the idea of people helping others. Because I think a lot of times in our society, there's this attitude that there's room for one person in this area and it's going to be me, or room for one woman. And to me, it's like, well, can't we all just help each other, uplift each other, support each other, and kind of be friends and allies instead of bitter enemies? And I try very hard to kind of live by that as much as I can, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And
And
I
we're getting requests for this recipe, Samantha. So we're going to have to, could you send me the link or can you post and I'll share the olive puff recipe? Because Monique is running this.
I'd be happy to. Yeah. I know when you have like I explained it earlier in the show. So when you have the full video, it'll be available, but I'll also send you the picture of it in the cookbook so we can show everybody.
Definitely. Definitely. Y'all want to chat real quick? Let me check on the pie. It's been a minute. I need to make sure it's not burned.
am hungry. I'm hungry for lunch. I hope this gets right soon. Oh, I don't think I put enough butter. They said 1 teaspoon of butter.
All right, here's what mine looks like, guys.
Wow. That looks beautiful.
It's way better than I thought it would. So, yay.
You did a great job on the lettuce.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really happy with how it turned out. One of my 500 million hobbies is making homemade ice cream from scratch. My grandfather used to do that for me when I was a little girl, and now I do it and I make it for my friends and my friends' children. So I should whip up some vanilla and put with that pie. That would be really good.
That sounds delicious. I think I haven't made ice cream from scratch in a long time, but the one ice cream from scratch recipe that I love is Dorothy Lamore's strawberry ice cream.
Oh, so good. Oh my God. Yes.
It's amazing.
You
There's a
guys have the
genetic,
old-fashioned
I'm
ice
going
cream?
in the
huh?
cookbook too.
You guys have the old-fashioned like crank type of version?
That's what my grandpa had when I was a little girl, but he also had a big garage and he'd sit in there with the rock salt and the crank. But we're,
Yeah.
we're living in an LA apartment. It's not conducive to that. And I used to have the Cuisinart ice cream maker. The problem is those bowls only last like a year and then those break. So now I have a KitchenAid mixer and I got the ice cream making extension, which is a frozen bowl and a thing that does it for that. So kind
Oh,
of embracing modern technology somewhat, but yeah, there's a Jeanette McDonald peach ice cream recipe too. I would be eager to try. So
that sounds delicious. Jeanette is another one. I found a lot of her recipes and quite a few that she actually made.
very cool.
Just
Alex
write this stuff.
actually made them.
All right. So, Monique, if I could fly to Amsterdam right now, you know I would, and I would bring you some pie. I really wish I could. Believe me, it'd be amazing. So, how's the pie coming along, Simone?
Oh, it's great. I did a bit of a crumble on top, but I didn't put enough butter because she said 1 teaspoon, and it didn't, it didn't melt enough. So I'm adding a lot more, which will probably make it taste even better.
Very
More
cool.
butter is never a bad thing.
Will you
Yeah.
send us a picture of your pie?
Yeah, yeah.
'Cause I like to post the blog. I like to post the recipe with notes of how I made it, how I did it, how it tasted, any adjustments I had to make to it just to, work with it. And all right. Any further thoughts? We've been on for a little bit. So, any further thoughts on Claudette Colbert?
I just hope everybody gets the chance to discover her. I mean, I honestly think we could be sitting here all day just listing her fantastic movies. Like, we didn't even talk about Midnight. We didn't even talk about like, I know there's so many good ones. It's impossible, but she was just so varied. She could do any genre, any era. She's got her pre-codes, her war, as you mentioned, her post-war. She was just a phenomenal person, and I hope everybody looks her up and discovers a movie of hers today that they haven't seen. And these recipes are so good for the holidays, so you got to try these.
Also, watch The Gilded Lily. I love that one.
Okay.
I would agree with Simone's earlier suggestion of I Met Him in Paris. That's probably my number one Claudette film ever.
So fun. The snow scenes. I love those.
Her and Melvin Douglas's chemistry is incredible. I think that's probably my favorite. Thunder on the Hill would probably be second favorite, though. I really love that one.
I actually did a blog post a little while ago, I think maybe a year ago, where I ranked my top 5 Claudette films, which was fun, but it was really hard.
It is hard. I like Torch Singer too.
Oh,
Haven't
that
seen that one.
oh my gosh, that one, it was so good.
Free as a bird on the wing.
Yeah.
Just the way she says that in that
And
movie.
it's so short. It's short. There's no scene that you need to cut in that movie.
The thing about pre-codes too is they were tight. You don't see a 2-3 hour pre-code typically. They were like 90 minutes or less. And they got so much story in such an efficient way in those films,
Yeah,
I love Smiling Lieutenant too, from the late 20s with Maurice Chevalier. I think that was like one of the few, maybe the only musical she did.
Yeah, she was just a wonderful, wonderful talent. And I love celebrating her films. And I've noticed, by the way, too, guys, that sometimes if you have some free time, you can find some pretty rare stuff on YouTube and online that some people have posted and normally I don't advocate for that because I say, oh, buy the physical media, give these movies or these companies that put them out the profits. Obviously, they deserve that. But if there's stuff that is not on DVD and there's probably no chance in hell it's going to be, then if you can find it online somewhere, do it because, sometimes that's the only way you have to see certain titles.
I agree, for sure. It's such a valuable resource. I kind of don't even watch TCM anymore. I just pull up whatever I need online.
Yeah, it's very much there. Like they have everything.
All right, guys. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. So, Simone, tell us where everybody can find you online if they want to follow you and learn more about you and your work.
Yeah, so my Instagram is the only thing that I'm on. I'm at Teenage Golden Age Book.
Okay,
And you can find my book online by just looking it up. I could send you the link so you can put it on your blog post or something.
that'd be great. Love that.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I
Samantha, where
also
can people
I have
find
a
you online?
website. I've I've got a website, simoneelias.com. So, and I'm also doing book events, so you can find them there.
Well, if you come to LA, you let Samantha and I know because we will be there like immediately to support you.
I'm doing Barnes and Noble Santa Monica.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have a date for that yet or
I think February.
February? Okay, keep us posted. I'll be in touch.
Okay, I will.
So exciting.
Great.
Thank
Samantha,
you.
where can people find you online?
Right now, I am mostly on Twitter, X, and Instagram at Classic Film Geek. And you can find my Cooking with the Stars posts over at classicmoviehub.com and my regular blog posts related to old movies at musingsofaClassicFilmAddict.com.
I know that blog.
That's me.
Excellent. And you can find me HollywoodKitchenShow.com, CemeteryTour.com, and Cemetery Tour Guide. I do have a Patreon for Hollywood Kitchen, by the way, and any donations for that go to buy ingredients and cookbooks and supplies and whatnot. So I love doing these episodes. I love just making the food, having these great conversations with amazing people. And thank you to everybody who's watching. I really appreciate it. So please stay tuned, guys, for more food, fun, and film history from Hollywood Kitchen. Bye-bye.
Bye.